And the key at this moment is to mute it, because otherwise we'll hear
Right.
the audio with a moment of delay. So we'll get two audios. So I always wait to where I can mute. Okay, Kelsey, it's all yours.
It's pause. I don't know if it's muted, is it?
Pause is what I mean.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't actually pause to YouTube, but it hears.
And now they're catching us talking about this.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Oh, I wonder if there's a way to move this.
Oh.
We're good, Kelsey. Sorry, we're making little adjustments to our screen here.
All good. All right. Well, hello everyone. Happy 2024. All right. So we have a semi-full agenda today. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start off as usual with our welcome and introductions. If you want to share your name, pronouns, if you would like to, your role on the commission, if you have one, and the task force, and yeah. My name is Kelsey. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the chair of this task force, and I'm going to popcorn to Joaquin.
Yeah, happy New Year. Good evening. My name is Joaquin, and I am a member of this task force and the commission last I checked.
Yes, sir.
So that is my role. Laura?
I'm Laura Fouts. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a member of the task force and the commission.
Awesome.
Gretchen.
And yeah, let's go to Gretchen.
Very good. Hi, everybody. My name is Gretchen Bennett. She, her pronouns, and I'm the staff liaison to the commission.
Fantastic. All right, moving on to public comment. Gretchen, did we receive any?
None received.
Okay, are there any public comments in this space? All right, seeing none, we'll move into approval of the minutes. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from the November meeting?
So moved.
It has been moved. Is there a second? Great, Laura seconds. All those in favor, thumbs up, yes, or make some affirmative motion. Beautiful, great. All right, minutes have been approved. And then now moving on to the Transgender Day of Remembrance debrief. Gretchen had sent out a planning document that I had created. So I made this planning document like looking forward to like whenever in the future I am not chairing the task force or part of the commission. I thought it would be helpful for whoever takes this event over to have kind of a starting place. So it's here. There's like important links, so like where we get the names and the pictures, poster examples, the scripts that were used, volunteer names and roles, and then like different communications that like emails that I sent out to businesses, articles that were written, instructions, etc. And then some feedback. So some feedback that I gathered from myself, but then also I had emailed the readers and greeters, was larger font for the list of names for the readers. Joaquin, the readers really appreciated your pronunciation guide. People were saying they were driving to the event listening to it. So thank you for that. They also suggested that they get editing access to the list of names so they could add their own phonetic spelling. And I know, Joaquin, you had offered to do that. So unsure kind of which direction to go in that way. To have a copy of the script for tech support, encourage the readers to read a little bit slower because there wasn't much time for viewers to read the names, view the pictures, and just kind of like take in the information and the importance of each moment. Microphone practice prior to the event, because volume was an issue at times. There was an error, and I still don't know how that error happened. In transitioning over from slide 1 to slide 2, like the file. Again, I don't know how it happened, double checked. So maybe transitioning to a different slideshow method. Have only 2 greeters and 1 person staffing the Human Rights Commission table. Having the city create a Facebook event, but unfortunately disable the comments if we're able to, because that was an issue with some pretty negative comments. And then Congresswoman Andrea Salinas is interested in being a speaker next year, or at least being part of the event. So I included a staff member's email who had been contacting me about the event. So that was a lot. Are there any like other pieces of feedback that people want to share?
I wasn't there, but thank you very much for the booklet. I don't know what to call it, the guide to the event. I think the guide, I think that is a best practice that we probably should adopt for other things that we do to bolster our institutional memory. Because for a lot of reasons, but you know, Gretchen is but one person and human, and it would be I'd love to have some kind of repository to do stuff like that. So I thank you for doing that.
Of course.
I have a question. I was just thinking about the event, and have we ever talked about or considered having live music or any musical components to it?
The original history of the event was a conversation about not wanting to do music,
Okay.
but that was reflective of the group of people who were there planning the event at the time. What I remember is commissioners spoke about not wanting music from which they received so much joy and positive experience associated with the loss and the violence of losses. So they preferred the
What do you mean by that?
silent.
You can use, was there, are you talking about a particular song? Or?
No, what I remember is the commissioners spoke eloquently, so I'm sure I'm not doing it justice, to music of all forms brings so much joy and beauty to her life. And this was different, that this was a somber honoring of people who lost their lives very violently and tragically and didn't want those worlds to collide, so to speak, didn't want music and that death to be overlaid. I can appreciate it's a matter of opinion and personal preference, and so that could be something. But I remember a pretty active conversation when the group first launched, and the initial founding team opted not to do music.
This year I put together a playlist of instrumentals.
I saw that.
I forgot to put that in the guide. It's fine. So I felt like that was an in-between, like welcoming people into the space so it's not like super quiet, but it's not like joyful music. But like live music that could, I mean, that's
So yeah,
I'm not
I
against
asked
it.
because unfortunately in my life I've been to a lot of funerals. And not that this is a funeral, but it's a vigil. It's a somber occasion, and music is I'm at a loss to understand exactly what our predecessors were talking about, to the extent that music telegraphs a lot of emotions. I mean, music is emotional, but it's not necessarily joyful. And we are memorializing people through image and naming them, and physically by convening. And music is another way to remember and honor them. I'm not saying a song, but there can be, orchestral music formed while people come in, performed after, performed during if the appetite is there. It can be music composed by trans composer. It's just another way to add depth. Not that it needs it up. I mean, it could, I mean, it's beautiful. I'm not saying anything about it other than to say, have we considered music as was one other way of making it a thing. It also, by the way, would be a way to extend the programming. I mean, I don't think it's too short, but I think it was just over 45 minutes. And it's been that way before. I think bringing it to the hour would be beautiful. I think if people are looking for spaces if they're looking for opportunities to communally grieve and come together and to reflect, music is an opportunity to do that. If you have 4 minutes before and after that, whatever speech any elected leader gives or whatever names are read, those are bookend moments to allow people the opportunity and the space and the medium through which to be emotional. And so I don't know, I think music would be a beautiful way of going about doing that. I'm also a musician, so I'm also biased to those things. But you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Laura, do you have any thoughts?
I have my mouse, but it doesn't work with my computer, so I keep grabbing the wrong thing because it's my mouse for my work computer. But anyhow, I like music. I don't have I think that would be nice. I mean, generally when you have a memorial, there's some type of music and music can be soothing. So I agree with you, Joaquin. I don't have any reason to feel like we shouldn't have music. I think it would be lovely.
Yeah, I'm definitely not I think live music adds a little piece of complication, which is absolutely fine. Like there's a reason why we planned last year's event so far in advance. But I personally like some noise when you're walking into a space. It feels a little less intimidating, and can kind of elevate the mood. And I don't mean that in like making it more positive, but the mood that you're trying to kind of create. So I think whether it is a playlist or live music, I thought that was a nice change.
Yeah. And to that middle point that you made, Kelsey, too, there's a world in which not having music, essentially what your experience is as an audience member or an attendee is you go in, I know it wasn't this year, but in years past, the room is silent. You're there to be in community with folks and you just sit there. And in a way, it's actually isolating in a way. I would imagine it could be, at least for folks, where you're supposed to be there in community, but then the atmosphere for community isn't there. And so you're left to just take in what is really a heavy thing, alone but with others. And that's not what we want to go for.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the little bit of noise from the music allows people to feel a little bit safer about like talking, or a little bit more comfortable. And yeah. Okay, so hopefully music of some type moving forward. And yeah, like we'll be on the lookout for I think it would be cool if we had live music to have a trans musician or a non-binary musician or group, or at least a group whose members are LGBTQ. That'd be cool, but definitely we can add that to the hopes of next year. Okay. Anything else about Transgender Day of Remembrance? Debrief,
I
feedback?
have a question. Do we thank the senator?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I did not. So
No, it's all good. Yeah, I sent everyone an email, readers, greeters, and of course the senator. So I think yes, I guess You know what? I'm gonna make some edits to the guidebook. I'm gonna add the music, but then also the thank you notes that I sent. Let's see. Thank you for that, Joaquin.
Well, see, this is Gretchen. I was curious how folks experienced the up and down off the stage. From the audience perspective, it looked less awkward. But I wondered what it was like from your perspective as one of the speakers.
Yeah, I think we might have to, in like next year, have the readers in towards the back. For we didn't have anyone this year use the ramp, everyone used the stairs, but
Yeah.
I think in the future, if we have someone who would like to use the ramp or needs to use the ramp, having them be in the front and then go back and then go forward might be a little awkward. So we might have them towards the back. But I had the folks who read last year and then read this year did provide feedback that they preferred not being on stage
Yeah,
during it. So,
copy.
so I think that was a good change. I will also add that to the guide. Okay, anything else?
How did you feel about Laux Auditorium? That's our second time running there. Pros and cons, perhaps.
It's a large space. And I think if there were more people, that'd be awesome. It just can feel kind of empty when there's like 20 people.
Yeah.
Um, so I like the space. I don't think I want to push to change it, but rather push to get it out more into the community, so people know about it and want to attend.
Yeah, copy.
Does anyone have, I know y'all weren't able to make it, but any thoughts?
I've been there in the past and I would agree with you.
Yeah, but it would be nice to strategize ways to boost attendance as opposed to finding a smaller space.
Was attendance down from last year, Kelsey?
I don't know. I wasn't able to attend last year. But I'd say this year, like 20, 25 people, wouldn't you say, Gretchen?
I would, without looking back to see if I wrote a note down, and I think it was smaller attended this year than last year.
Was at least 40.
Yeah.
And that may have something to do with the fact that there was some difficulty getting the city messaging out. Would you think that's fair?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, we started with a Facebook event and then it got a ton of difficult traction, and we did get it out in other ways,
Sure.
like our more one-way communication pieces.
Yeah.
The only other city factor that I'm conscious of is that we held at the same night was the community work session on community violence, but I don't know how much overlap there would be in the attendance. Certainly some of the elected officials would have gone had they were expressing regret not being able to be at the event.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. And I feel like I know I did more like outreach this year, like reaching out to like the colleges. I know Chemeketa, their club, I don't remember, or their diversity office, and then Willamette. But I think there's still some opportunities that were missed. I think that we can do a better job about.
Yeah, I feel like last year it fell on a Sunday as opposed to you know, after a work day on a weekday. That could have something to do with attendance too.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is a Wednesday this year.
Oh, this year, were we in the same week as holiday?
It was around Thanksgiving time, of
It
course.
was the same week. It was the Monday of the holiday week, and that might have affected
People may have been out of
travels.
town, yeah.
Yeah, that's good point there. So,
I don't think we have that problem next year. Next year it falls with more of a week spacing, I think.
yes. Yep, it is the Wednesday, like a week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that should create more distance.
Yeah, so that would make sense.
Yeah, but students would have been on break too, probably.
Mhm. Yep.
All that
Okay.
to say is, we'll just continue our outreach next year.
Yeah. And I think because we are planning so far advanced, we have a lot of time to like brainstorm and get some like community partners involved in everything. So yeah. Okay.
When would
Any
you like, speaking of when to start, when would you like this topic to reappear on the task force agendas? Do you have a sense of when to renew the monthly conversation about it?
I would say either the July or August meeting. I think July, that will be after Pride Month. So if we have like Pride programming, yeah, I say July or August at the latest.
Copy. Thank you.
Folks okay with that?
I was gonna say August, so yeah. that sounds
Okay.
good.
Nice. All right. Anything else about Transgender Day of Remembrance event?
Another shout out to you, Kelsey, for
Oh, thank you.
all the love and labor that you put into it.
Appreciate that. It's an important event, and I'm glad to be part of it. Okay. All right, so our next big project, so this is going to be kind of a brainstorming session. So hearing back about what we received from the belonging survey, is that folks, more specifically, obviously in this context, people who are LGBTQIA plus, reported having or experiencing barriers to reporting hate and bias. So we thought it would be a good idea to take on this project to identify the barriers, the potential barriers, and work to potentially remove them or lower them, to make people feel more comfortable about their ability to report hate and bias in whatever avenue they would like to. So, saying that, I'm wondering, what are people's like thoughts, whether that is, I think these are barriers, or I think this would be a good next step.
Kelsey or Gretchen or whomever, can you remind me? I feel very far removed now from the survey in terms of being able to recall specific details. And I could easily, I suppose, look it up. But do you remember if the professor and her students disaggregated data along where folks from the LGBTQI plus community were registering either senses of discrimination or feeling like they couldn't report issues to police or people of authority or whomever regarding what specific issues? Obviously, there's something. So I'll put it to you this way. You know, as a queer person, I can experience slights or discrimination or harassment because of my identity and feel not empowered to report those because of the nature of the slight and my identity. I can experience as a queer person a slight because of my race if I'm non-white, and also similarly feel unempowered to report that maybe unrelated slight because of my queer identity. And when you add place onto that, it could maybe I'm trans and I felt slighted in a medical context, or maybe I'm a gay 13-year-old boy and I felt slighted in middle school, or maybe I'm in the community and my employer I feel like is whatever. So you see what I'm saying? And so I feel like it would be productive to the extent that the data allows, being able to disentangle those questions so that we're not just, though I think we can brainstorm generatively and productively, because from our own context and knowledge and stuff and general assessment of the landscape, to be more targeted in those ways would be helpful for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, Gretchen, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have that
That's my memory
data.
as well.
I agree, unless there's anything to mine from the comments, rereading the comments,
Yeah.
that could be a homework takeaway for the group, is to review the comments and see if particular things jump out.
And admittedly, that's something I ought to have done before I got here, but so I didn't do my homework.
It was not assigned. Okay.
But it might be an ask for the professor or whomever, because I feel like that offer on her hand is always open, which is to say, if you ever need it sliced or diced this way, just tell me.
Yeah,
if-
specifically polling, if they said, yes, I identify as LGBTQIA plus, cool, this is all of their responses.
Yes,
So-
and maybe identifying specific lattices to ask her to do, maybe 3 or 4, to say we want it this way and that way, or maybe even fewer, 2 or 3, so that by next month or the month after, or however long it takes her to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, do you have in mind some?
Well, I mean, the simplest one probably for the professor to do would be just where are people who cited discrimination on the basis of their orientation, gender identity, reporting or saying that the discrimination is happening. That might be an easy one. As to say, are people who are attesting to discrimination on the basis of this identity group reporting it at schools or the employer, where are barriers happening, which is kind of related, but maybe a little bit not related to the larger question, which was how do we ameliorate barriers and overcome reporting. But if we don't know where it's happening, then that I think at least muddies our ability to answer the bigger question, which is how do we make it easier for folks to have access to resources and help should they need or want it. Does that make sense? That would be one ask. I'd love to hear from others with what is top of mind for them, but
I'm trying to remember, I think specifically, this is kind of on a different topic. They had identified reporting to police as what they were most uncomfortable with. So as we're moving through this, that will be like a partnership that we'll want to look at and how we can work together in that. Laura, thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking that it's hard to, kind of what Joaquin is getting at, which is it's hard to guess at barrier, I mean, I feel like I would be guessing if I tried to think of, what barriers, I mean. Yeah. And I don't know if there's ways to elicit, like to, I don't know, maybe have some type of community. Like a ask, maybe we can reach out to some of the contacts that you have, like Capital Pride, or some other contacts, and see if we could generate any interest in maybe joining, having public comment, or having the public maybe join one of our meetings, is sort of a, rather than having like a whole totally different thing where we have some type of town hall or something. But it feels to me like to address any need, or it feels like we have to understand really what the barriers are in order to have any meaningful type of conversation about it. That's what's going through my mind.
Yeah, I like the idea of like reaching out and inviting people to our next task force meeting with the hey, we are working on this project. We would love your input, feedback, sharing your experience. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable with that, they can email. I think that would be helpful. Gretchen,
Yeah.
Joaquin, what do you think? Oh, sorry, Laura.
No, I was just saying, yeah, even if it's just sending their public comments our way, if that would be great too.
Yeah. Oh no.
What?
Oh, I thought you all were frozen, and I was like,
Oh,
oh
we
no.
were sitting pretty still, weren't we?
Seriously, that was impressive.
Looking at you.
It's like,
Wow.
my
reactions to it is that the community blind survey is, of course, only one measure or mode of community engagement. And so I think to Laura's point, we should not limit ourselves to that. Of course, it forms the basis, it informs rather this whole thing, this whole project of identifying barriers, but that could just easily be a starting point. So I agree with Laura. I think we should find and hold opportunities and spaces for community engagement. What that looks like, I think we have flirted in various ways, whether as a full commission or as task force, to do something, maybe not a town hall, but something akin to whatever, inviting people, and to the extent that it has or hasn't happened, or maybe how do we do that? I don't think we ever really arrived at a place. Forgive me, I don't know what that was. But usually I bring my own chair, and so this is the problem where I sit in the chair and I don't know what to do with myself. But you see what I'm saying, where we would have to figure out how to do that. The trick, of course, is we are in this instance would be in a place of learning and listening, and there's a delicate way of doing that to the extent where you don't want to feel like we are convening folks just to excise information from them and to extract and to make them do the labor of educating us. Not that that's what Laura, of course, was suggesting in any way whatsoever, but that is always the thing to tease out when doing these sorts of things. And also, what is our capacity, both in terms of staffing and our own time and the way we do things, and it would just be a logistical thing to figure out, and to do any of that with any immediacy or urgency is another thing too. We don't have inexhaustible time, and we only meet monthly. But otherwise, love it, and would love to find ways to make it happen. Leader, what say you?
What say I? Yeah, I think this is what I'm picturing. We invite folks to join us at our next meeting, with the explanation that we are doing this project. We are wanting information about their experiences. And this is what we're going to do with that information. If someone is interested in kind of being a part of this project's, I don't want to say project's task force, a task force within the task force. I think that can be a thing that we maybe look into. Like we have a special group who are interested in taking this information and kind of continuing the conversation with us, whether they like are attending these meetings or working on the side. I don't know.
Yeah. Recruiting interested people, maybe, is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing you say, brother?
Yes. Thoughts?
Yeah. That's fun. That's good.
I can offer a touch of background and also a question too, if that's helpful. An early iteration of the task force began to discuss this topic of how to help increase comfort with reporting, and that generated a small group, like you were saying, Kelsey, who came down to CC Media and shared thoughts and perspectives about positive interactions that could happen, or sort of their requests or advice around interactions that can happen in a law enforcement context. So if you're a victim of a crime and you're wanting to report, if you're a suspect of a crime and you're in an interaction, here are things that are helpful and harmful. And then that was specifically designed for the law enforcement agencies to be able to hear and receive at their training. They did not want that to be a public display of their words, but it was I know a really valuable piece that was done. That was quite a few years ago, certainly pre-COVID. So just a little background on one thing. And then I'm also aware that we're having a bit of a parallel conversation at the broader Human Rights Commission. And one of the things that I remember that came up at the last commission meeting was some concern that some potential reporters of crime may be concerned about what happens to the information as the investigation is closed, and how much of it is shareable via the public records process. I was doing a little bit of reading on that, and from what I can tell, there's pathways to request protection of information in the courts with a court order. But preliminarily, I'm wondering if there's a gap, if there's not a suspect, and if things don't get all the way to a court process. And how, if people are concerned about their privacy in sharing information, that may be a pathway to learn more about and explore.
Are you saying concerns around maybe being outed or something like that?
Yeah. Being outed, or one's own name, just being there, in the context of a situation. Those are all, like Laura said, I feel hesitant to guess or speculate, but I think that was what I felt I heard at the last meeting, was fear of maybe, like, if people haven't come out, or just generally not wanting their personal information in the public domain.
Well, I think those are different conversations. Which I think, I think with respect to the last conversation at the full commission meeting, the question of citizenship and status.
Right.
Was that context. And to the extent that is relevant here, I think it has more to do with, if being outed or being publicly identifiable as X, Y, or Z puts me in a vexing, complicated, and or dangerous position, or an insecure, unsafe position, then there are maybe potentially strong legal reasons, or justifiable reasons to have that conversation.
Yeah.
having information being public or otherwise, accessible, I think is probably irrelevant, but maybe a less strong reason to consider it. What I mean, like I think a lot of people's information is public and accessible.
True, yeah. But is there sexual orientation or gender identity automatically?
Right, and so I think then the conversation becomes, maybe we advocate for, if it comes to be this way, if this is what we find in the course of outreach and conversation with the community, maybe there's a world in which there's an advocacy on our part to say none of that information is relevant to the work that SPD does or judicial rulings or whatever, but shouldn't be openly available. There's a world in which that happens, and for these reasons. But
and I don't know, but just connecting the theme from the
no, I think
meeting
that's a good connection.
for conversation.
That's a good connection.
Yeah.
Right?
Do we, on that specific thing, would that be like a lawyer question?
I started going down that path of researching the law and when protections can come into play. That's the path I was going down. It may at some point. From what I can see, there's Oregon statute that provides a pathway in the court context to request some privacy. But I couldn't yet find anything in the pre-court early report stage. And so that doesn't mean it isn't there. It's just this place I'm at in my research, personally trying to help prepare the commission on this topic.
Okay.
I'm not a lawyer or a legal expert by any stretch of the imagination. However, I would say that it is substantively different to have the right to request privacy and to have your privacy assumed. Those are very, very different things. And so it may very well be our position that privacy ought to be an assumption on the part of our legal system and not a ad hoc request. That's not just arbitrary. It's also my understanding that privacy forms the basis of a lot of our constitutional and federal code around these sorts of questions. And so maybe Salem could be a leader in that way if there's something that reveals itself to be of interest to us in the community. I'm just saying privacy is very relevant. Privacy is probably the question of the 21st century. Now I'm getting off on a larger thing, but you see what I'm saying.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. We have a lot going on. So steps.
Yeah, we're straying, I think, a little bit. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry. This is kind of like what the brainstorm situation is about. I lost my train of thought. It's fine. Okay, so next steps. Homework is to review the comments on the belonging survey. And while we're at it, just go ahead and refresh yourself on it. Gretchen, I believe you're going to reach out to Marianne about
well, if I may, Kelsey, interrupt you. I think in the life of this meeting, the most immediate next step should be to figure out what we should ask the professor to disaggregate or compile, what our request to her ought to be. I only gave but one phrasing and one example. I think we could, if the appetite is there, have more. And if that is the case, what would folks say to that? And what would the reaction be? David's joining us for the next meeting. Come join us, David. What do you guys think of that? Or say to that?
I'm wondering if she could just pull all the data, all the survey responses from folks who answered yes to the do you identify as LGBTQ? Would that be too much?
So no, that's fine. However, I think we're interested in narrative questions. We're interested in being able to understand, if I understand the conversation so far well, we're trying to be able to ascertain, identify patterns and where things are and what's happening and to whom and how does that contribute. And so I think, yes, that's very valuable. And at least for me, I would have to do a lot of extra work to be able to extract and identify patterns or conclusions from just here's all of the data. So if possible, I'd love to have some specific asks of her. Unless folks are better than I am at those sorts of things, which is totally possible. As I am better at most things.
I could certainly describe what you just said and say that what the group is looking for is patterns, analysis, any detail specific to our LGBTQIA plus communities with particular attention on reporting. And
Yeah.
also to your point earlier about where
Yeah.
situations
Hi,
are.
Kathy. So there is the where, but also, and here's another question, and she's gone. Another question for me would be, for example, what percentage of people in the queer community who are describing X, Y, and Z are also claiming or experiencing discrimination in other relevant categories? And what are those?
Right,
and
right.
how does that interplay or sit in conversation with our other conversations we're having that specifically is addressing this target demographic and category and experience? And so these are all relevant things that I just don't have any way of evaluating with the summary report. Relevatory as it is, just doesn't provide that. So that would be the second question that I would have.
I'm looking at the survey. So question 9 is, in the past 12 months, which types of discrimination have you personally experienced in Salem? So like pulling that data.
Yes, and then I can, if I'm a survey taker, I can say gender-based, sexual orientation, race, ability, whatever, and I answer specifically a set of questions for each of those categories. And so I would imagine there's a world in which the professor or Marianne could say, for everyone, so the unifying one would be LGBT, whatever LGBT catch-all you want to have. For whomever answered this, what else were they answering and what ways does that impact their experience and the things that they're saying? That would be another relevant thing for us to be able to move forward on these questions, is what I'm saying. So that would be at least two questions with that.
And then there was also, as you said before, in what places or situations have you experienced discrimination?
That's right.
Okay. And then do we want to know like how often?
Sure.
Cool.
I don't know that that was a question, but that's why I looked up
Well,
after
frequency
the
of discrimination is a question. I don't know if it's tied to
copy.
which identity. So the question on the survey is, how often do you experience discrimination in Salem? I don't think it goes down to hourly, but let's say daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. But I don't know if there's a way to say what type of discrimination you're experiencing with what frequency. I don't think we can make that connection. And if we can, then Marianne would have to say that. I don't know.
Oh, I thought there was a question, like when they would answer, it would.
Maybe. And if so, then you're right. I don't remember it correctly. But that would be a question for Marianne.
Yeah. If that's a possibility, if they could pull that, that'd be cool.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, depending on how hard it is or isn't, I think those 3 questions would be at least get us started. I don't like being this close to the screen. I feel like I'm like looking into the result here.
Okay. Anything else about the survey specifically? Okay. And then my homework, if I am thinking correctly about what we talked about, is reaching out to community groups and inviting them to our next meeting. Did we agree on that? Or do we want to hold off?
Thoughts on inviting them to a general commission, like a special conversation? Or not. The only reason I say that is because I think we need to have a conversation about what we're learning and discovering to be in a position to ask them questions. And I don't want to invite them and then have them wait a half an hour while we make up our minds about what we want to ask them, only to then ask them. And maybe not ask them what we want to ask them.
Yeah, I don't think we're prepared to invite them to come to the next meeting. And it would
But
be
that's not to say
good
that
to,
connections can't be made, Kelsey, in the meantime. Don't mean to cut you off, Laura.
no, I was just gonna say, it would be good to incorporate what you were talking about, Joaquin, with, there's a way to ask the question that doesn't put the work burden on the people we're asking, right? Like, we just want the information, but you know, that's all we want from you, kind of thing. So I think we need to plan a little bit before we have the conversation.
Cool. Yeah. So maybe between now and next meeting, like brainstorm a little bit of like potential questions or like what do we want to know? And obviously the belonging survey, that data will inform that as well. Okay. So homework, brush up on belonging survey, Gretchen email Marianne, and all of us brainstorm some potential questions or what we're looking for. Okay. Other things about this? Beautiful. Oh, I closed my agenda. That's fine.
We're down to member remarks and announcements.
Okay. Hey, member remarks and announcements.
I've spoken enough, I think, in this last hour.
And then
But grateful for both of you.
I love this team. Also, hi everyone else.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Kathy and David. All right. Well, is last chance for anything else? Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, friends, I think I don't know what's happening right now. What's happening with my brain? It's fine. I hope you all have a lovely evening. And be well.